Dun, 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 dun.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, friends. Hello. Oh, I didn't even change my name, Team Fighter Code. You know what? It could just stay like that for now because we're doing Ready Sprints after anyway.
Yeah,
Fine.
it's fine.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another meeting of the Annotation Station Book Club. Woo, woo, woo. Yes, we are here for our nonfiction discussion for To Save and Destroy by Viet Nguyen, which I think I'm saying correctly because I looked it up. If I'm not, someone please feel free to correct me. And this was our October pick, right?
Um, yeah,
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
thinking, yes.
Yes. So, yay. And today, as always, I have my lovely co host, Natalie.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we're here to discuss. And I'm going to have a lot of things to say because look at all these tabs.
Well, I'm glad because I came here bringing vibes and vibes only, no preparation of any kind.
That is okay. So, um, this is going to be a hard one to give a general synopsis for because it's essays.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the general construct of the book is about existing and creating as an other
Mm-hmm.
and the various ways that can experiencing life as an other can impact your life.
Correct.
I think that's the through line between all the essays. I feel like it's mentioned in every single one. That's like the connective tissue,
Mm-hmm.
even though he goes into a lot of different things within the essays. I still feel like at the heart of it is that experience of being the other and how that's a flexible, I don't know if that's the word I'm trying to look for, but it's not a static experience.
Mm-hmm. It's a very intersectional experience.
So,
And this did come out this year, so it's the topics in here are very timely because they're talking about writing as an other in the present in today. So we're going to be talking a lot about social commentary and the different life experiences through different people and narratives that they reference. And anything that we mentioned, please, I do suggest that one, you pick it up because it's very short. It's only like 106 pages, I want to say. But they do include the full biography and references in here to everything, all the other stories that they mention. So okay. So gosh, where do we start? Okay. Also, you know what? Before we start talking about this, if you're interested in joining us in the future, we'll gotta do a little plug for our book club, the Annotation Station. We do the fiction reviews on Natalie's channel, and we do the nonfiction on mine. All of our live shows are free on both of our YouTube channels, so make sure that you are subscribed to both of us so you can get notifications when those goes up. But if you would like to join us on our Discord, consider becoming a channel member on my channel at any level to get access to that. And also, like I post about it on all of my Instagram, TikToks, and all that stuff. So, yeah. Okay. So, let's talk about gosh, where do we start? Okay, so he starts off, the author, let's preface by talking about what his identity is, because he writes a lot about his experience, and he is a Vietnamese American, first generation Vietnamese American who is writing as an academic in graduate spaces and just institutions of higher learning and writing about being an other in a space that is founded in a hierarchy of supremacy and conformity. Um, and so his very first chapter just talks about language, I think, of the other and like being an other while writing in a space that is using the language that is not his own, that belongs to an other. And so there's all these different like forms of otherness, both onto him, but also up like him experiencing with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Like that's like pretty summarized what happens. Okay. So let me go to my tabs because I highlighted so many things. In this first chapter, in the prologue and first chapter, he talks about his parents being Vietnamese immigrants and the sacrifice that they made in moving to America for him to be able to have this access to a higher education through a Western lens that says that this education is valuable and is a necessary part of assimilation, or like what is considered like peak assimilation as far as like Western values go. And he talks about trying to like honor his family by telling story, but grappling with how he tells the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like you said something in the chat and Discord about that, which we agreed upon. Trying to remember what it was, but it was like about whose story, who gets to tell what story, I think.
I can't remember, honestly. I really can't. Because I feel like I was more actively talking, or at least with you. I don't know if I was even that active in the Discord itself.
Yeah, it might have been between us then.
Yeah, about translation itself, because that is a topic that interests me. And the difference between like what's the, I don't know if correct is the right term, but like the best space for, quote unquote translation. Because when he talks about translation, it's not the literal sense of the word of like, let's just use his example. Like he's Vietnamese, so this isn't Vietnamese, whatever, and translating that into English. It's like cultural things, cultural practices, cultural foods, and translating that into something that is understandable by those who are unfamiliar with it. And the concept of, well, not every space is one where you should even feel the need to do that, especially considering that since his background is a lot in the literary English canon, like you don't see them explaining to you things that are cultural practices of the US, or I think he mostly mentions like US writers, but even like English, British, whatever you want to call it. You don't see them explaining these things. They expect you to know what they are. And especially in the fiction realm is like, well, you shouldn't have to translate yourself in that regard, because it's not like he's opposed to explaining what something is or that resource existing somewhere. It's just like it shouldn't have to be in fiction. Like the space for it, if anything, would be in nonfiction, in other areas. But then he goes into, because I did think a lot about his aspect of like, how authentic can you be in writing anything? Like not just writing fiction, but nonfiction, anything. Like the best you can do is like, how did he phrase it? It was like authentically be inauthentic.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, your experiences are unique. And no one else is going to have lived a life exactly as you have. So what seems authentic to you, to the best of your ability, might seem inauthentic to someone else of a similar but different experience.
Yes.
So
100%. I have a section that I highlighted here that I think relates to what you're talking about. So I'm going to read it to kind of frame what I want to say. But it says here, this belief about stories offering salvation might be sentimental and self-serving for a storyteller. But if so, the sentimentality is alleviated by the possibility that stories could also save others by helping us confront or at least articulate the terror of abusive power and its manifestations in capitalism and colonialism, war and authoritarianism, patriarchy, and its norms of sex and gender. Ultimately, stories could also brace us for the mystery of the end of our lives and those of our loved ones. But if stories wield this power, they also have the capacity to destroy us. And so I really resonated with this because since he's talking about higher academia, I feel like when you are a writer or a creative person of any kind and also a minority in higher academia, because a lot of this is framed from the fact that he is an Asian American person who is a minority in these white institutions that are founded in white identity or white values, right? And so he's using language and the academic language of a way of saying, like, in order for him to succeed in this space, he has to create about being an other in a way that makes the otherness less so that it is palatable to the institution, right? Which is made up of an other to him. And so it's not that it's like a bad thing. I don't think what he's trying to say is that it's a bad thing to be part of higher academia, but it's okay to recognize that there is this like paradox, I guess, in a way. At least this is what my interpretation of it is. It's this paradox of like that there's this expectation that when higher academia deems a minority valuable enough to take up space in said academia, that there's going to be this level of authenticity that is brought to the table. And with presenting your otherness in a way that is palatable to that, something is ultimately lost, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because like this, there has to be something, whether it's in the language of the colonizer that the institution is founded in, or just like the way that the story is framed or how you choose to say it, is a certain level of vulnerability for anyone who is of any minority experience. And so there is something very vulnerable about accepting that there is this expectation that you are going to bring what they deem as authentic, right? And I think that's something that we hear a lot, or at least I've heard in academic spaces, is like, is it authentic enough if it doesn't seem exotic? Like, is it authentic enough if you're not being vulnerable? And like, there's this expectation that the minority is going to talk about the minority experience, but by setting that expectation, it is creating an otherness that that person didn't ask for. Am I making any sense?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You are making sense. I'm just listening.
Okay, cool. Feel free to react to any of that.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of what he talks about in higher education, in academia, I could relate to and understand as someone who I grew up in Puerto Rico. I was born in the US, like in Maryland. So I can't say I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, but I chose to move to Chicago and continue my education in English in particular. And already going into it in Puerto Rico, starting my education in English, my bachelor's in Puerto Rico, you can already see a lot of I guess you could say, the flaws of the canon and how they are upheld by these institutions, but it felt even more drastic once I moved to Chicago and was studying the same thing, but in the mainland, where these things are even more deeply embedded into the culture. Um, and there is this notion of, as you said, seeking an authentic story from the other, but also it's like, well, whatever they want to write, that should be enough. Like it shouldn't have to serve what you think they need to be doing. Um
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah.
I
No, I agree 100%. I like a personal anecdote, something I went through in grad school was when I was making art. I was making art about a form of otherness, more or less. I'm being very vague, but like generally that theme was involved with my research and what I was doing. And a lot of critique or feedback that I got was like, why don't you put Puerto Rican like patterns and symbolism and make it super clear and all this stuff? And I was like, but I don't want to give that to you. I shouldn't have to put up symbolism that you're familiar with from my island so that I can have a conversation about what I want to talk about, because I don't want to share that with you. And if I don't want to share it with you, I don't have to. And I think that there's this like unspoken form of continued oppression when we set an expectation that authenticity is only authentic when a minority is sharing their story, because their story can exist not for everyone, right?
yeah.
There is no such thing as a universal accessibility of someone's life experience, and that's okay. And also wanting to carry the weight of having that conversation with someone who is an other to yourself is something that you should be able to choose to do, not be expected to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the big thing. Hi, Katie. Um it's setting the expectation
Mhm.
when it's a proverbial thing of like, okay, and I'm pretty sure Lawrence shared a meme that was perfect about it. That's like, we don't want you here. So then you go and make a space for your people of shared experiences. And then the others are like, but why can't we be there?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you didn't want us there. So
Correct.
we had to make a space for us to be where
Correct.
we could be chill, basically. And now you want in and still not let us into your space. It's like, no, you want your space and our space.
Mhm. You can't have both.
You can't have both. If you're not willing to share your space, then you cannot have both. You cannot
Correct.
have your separate space and our space.
Correct. And like this goes for any marginalized group, right? The
Yeah.
author is talking about specifically his Vietnamese identity. He mentions that he's queer, but that's not really like where the focus of his book goes. It focuses on his Vietnamese Americanness. But that what we're saying exactly, it could be about it could be about an LGBTQ experience. It could be about a woman's experience. It could be about a BIPOC experience. Like all of these experiences, yes, it's great to share, but it's okay for them to have their own space too, where they don't have to share with others who are not of that, not of that demographic.
Yeah.
Like
And
queer
like
people need other queer people, and that's okay.
of course, it's beautiful and great to be invited into a space that you are not normally a part of. But that is precisely the crux of it. Like, you need the invitation. You cannot force the invitation. If they decide to invite you in, then yes, that's beautiful. That's great. That's all of that. But you cannot be expecting that. You cannot demand that, because that inherently causes friction in what otherwise would have been a chill situation, you know?
If you are invited, that is a privilege, not an expectation.
Exactly.
Yes, correct.
Exactly.
And that's what he gets to, I think, in like the first 2 chapters of this, is like he talks about how even though he is an academic, that him trying to publish a book about otherness in a world of publishing that is again founded in the same systems that higher academia is based on, he got rejections because in order for someone to publish a book that is about someone else's otherness, they have to accept that they're not the target audience, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed the first 2 chapters for that reason. Let's see what else. Oh my gosh, he talked about, I'm gonna get emotional. He talked about his parents. I cried.
That was a lot. It was a lot.
It was a lot. He talked about writing the story in English of his family, and I think his mother more specifically, and how she never really wrote her story. And like he knows the story from what he knows the stories of her life from what she told him. And is it an act of betrayal of him as her son who is carrying her story to now publish them, even though she is no longer here? Like, is it a respect or a disrespect to her story by him choosing to make parts of what information of what she trusted him with public knowledge? And it's not like it's anything, at least from my understanding, that's like egregiously private that he's divulging. It's just telling her story point blank, period.
Yeah. I think that's the part where he talks about the concept of a secret, and secrets that are shared with you and secrets you keep from yourself. That one was a big one for me because he talks about how there are points in the life of his mother that he says, like, I chose to keep that a secret from myself. In other words, I chose to not remember, to not preserve those memories because it was too painful to keep that within myself. And so I made it a secret to myself. And I can completely understand and relate to that, because I had similar, though not the same, experiences with my own mother, and her health, and things that are easier to forget, because the remembering is worse, than just letting it go or trying to let it go. And so part of as well of what he talks about was, I don't know how to frame this. Like the difference between basically like family secrets, like things you keep in your family and you're not supposed to share as well. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Probably not go to Smith today because I'm busy. Oh, that's okay.
That's all right, Katie.
Enjoy your day, Katie. Your cheerleaders in my absence, have a wonderful day. We will.
You too, Katie.
Yeah, it's like in a lot of families, there's these unspoken secrets that everyone just kind of agrees. We don't talk about Bruno.
Yeah.
More or less. But because of the fact that they're so unspoken, when you do have a member of the family who wants to be like, I kind of think of it, I guess, as like the family historian in a way. Like they want to record the family history and document it and kind of share their experience. It then becomes a question of where are the boundaries? Where is the gray line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of like where's the gray line is in like we consider this a family secret, but is it even worth being a secret? Like
Mhm.
what's so bad about it? Because
Mhm.
if I'm remembering correctly, like part of the secret of the family was like his mom's mental health.
Mhm.
Um and the significant challenges she had with it. Um and therefore some of her behavior, her getting institutionalized several times and all that. And it's like that's like our family secret, our family shame, but it doesn't have to be, you
Mhm.
know? Like this is something people suffer with and experience, and there shouldn't have to be shame
Mhm.
associated with it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
It falls out that experience of his mother. So they immigrated from Vietnam, and she ends up being institutionalized in the States, I think. And it just, from what I understand of the way he framed it, is like it falls outside of everything that his parents sacrificed for. And so it's kind of like none of these things exist in isolation. All of them are wrapped around the expectation and the sacrifice that the family makes and why they do so. And that's kind of like where the shame comes from. Yeah. So there was a lot of heaviness going on there, and like him talking about his family history. And also I think like he mentioned that he had a sister, I think that
Yeah.
they left behind in Vietnam, and they reconnected like when they were way older. I think maybe like in their 40s or something like that, 50s.
Something along those lines. Yeah. He
Yeah.
mentions that. And then basically the straight out of being like, well, we left you behind because you were adopted. So you weren't really a part of our family. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh man, that's awful.
Mhm.
When I read that part, and it was also such a short section of the book, I was like, how are we just gonna throw this away? I'm like, that that sucks. That like it sucks being that person, or I can assume it sucks to be that person left behind, because
Mhm.
truly she was left behind, not really checked on, not really trying to maintain a connection with
Mhm. Yeah.
so
Yeah. But again, that goes back to like the beginning, I think the first chapter before, or the second chapter before, when he talks about that, which is like we are only allowed to know as much as he wants to tell us, and we have no right to ask for more.
yeah.
Yeah. But there is a nice chunk of this book in the middle that talks about otherness within various Asian diaspora, and specifically talks about Palestine, which I did not know that this book was going to go so deeply into, but I was like very pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
by that. What it talks about is the idea of what Westerners consider the Middle East, and how that is actually framed from the lens of colonization when we call it the Middle East. It's actually Western Asia. And by calling it Western Asian nations and region, it recenters Asia as having its own agency as a continent versus only existing in proximity to the countries in Europe that colonized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the part that uh I don't know, that stood out to me about part of how he talks about that is also the notion of the creation of the term Asian American.
Mhm.
Because he's an interesting case because he is first generation. He immigrated here with his parents from Vietnam, but he firmly considers himself Asian American, which wouldn't necessarily always happen with that first generation. But he talks about who gets considered to be part of the term Asian American and why the term even came to be, basically. And part of it is this desire for community, both within like acceptance within the US, but also trying to expand it to other Asian communities, because otherwise you're existing in isolation in this country where you are the other. And I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna continue where I think you're going with this. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is that while, again, going back to the beginning point of it's okay for everyone to have their own space, but as a diaspora, with the definition of diaspora being like the extended culture group of peoples that are part of a culture that are outside of its original geographic location, that we all here as it's insert identity Americans are others amongst others, and there is a solidarity in that we should use to our advantage in order to fight the cause of otherness, which is colonization. Am I adding to that? Yes. Okay, cool. Like, I know where she's going. Okay.
Yes.
And then that doesn't mean, again, that you need to be 100% open with your entire experience to bridge that gap, but that that there is a solidarity that we can find.
Yeah. And I think he also brings up basically the like both the benefits and shortcomings of that. Like there are positives to trying to, build and maintain an Asian American identity, but also you cannot fully sacrifice the individuality of these different cultures.
Correct.
Because then if you're sacrificing the individuality of these cultures, then you're once again just serving colonization, you're serving empire, and I think that's also part of why he brings up the idea of the Middle East and the need to reframe, change the language used around it, because as it stands currently, they maintain their otherness even to some that should be in community with,
100%.
So
part of where he go, and which is why I think he did a really in my opinion a really well done job of incorporating the importance of standing up for Palestinians in this current time, because of the idea of Orientalism being a term that was created to form a division between Asians who identify as East Asian versus West Asian. And so it kind of like creates this hierarchy within Asian diasporas. Everything is in proximity to whiteness, right? And so like he eventually talks about the model minority. But he says here, like, Palestine should occupy more of an important place in the genealogy of Asian cultures. And it just goes into like what is done to one of us can happen to all of us, right? There's an important chapter. I'm going to try to talk about this as best as I can because I never read the original book that he references, although he does quote from a couple books. There was one book, oh dang, I can't remember. I got to find my note. There was one book in here that he mentioned that I did read. And I was like, yeah, I remember that. You're right. You're onto something. But this one particularly about I believe it's a Chinese man talking to a Jewish man, and they're talking about Haifa, which is a location in Israel. And this story is kind of like taking place around like just after World War II or something like that. Because he uses this story to exemplify how language is important to creating that divide, and how the Asian man in the story refers to the Japanese, who are, I think, are don't quote me on exactly like how the conflict was resolving in the story. All I know is that it has something to do with Japanese imperialism and Haifa and a location in Israel, and a Jewish man is kind of using words that would be seen as slurs about the Japanese, and the Chinese man is not using slurs. And so they're carrying on this conversation about a topic where, to me, it seems like they both agree on what they're saying, but how they say it matters more than the fact that they agree with what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Why did I bring that up again? I don't remember. I was just trying to like get my head around the story.
We're talking about language and terms used to describe people.
Yes.
And how these terms matter and have an impact into how people are seen.
Oh, I found it. Okay, can I read this like paragraph here that I think illustrates it? Okay. So the guys, I think the Jewish guy's name was, wait, who's Bill and who's Herb? Okay, Herb, I think, is the Jewish guy, and Bill is the Asian man. Okay, so to Herb, Israel's existence is necessary for Jewish self-defense, and the Japanese attack is evidence of that need. So meaning like the events that are happening are like a self-fulfilling, like reaffirming his worldview. Yeah. Herb's plaintive question implies that, because he uses the word Japs, which would be a slur, right? Or a derogatory way of referring to Japanese people. He implies that Japs and Jews should have no shared antagonism. Bill, puzzled, says, Japanese disguised as Arab guerrillas. The shift from Japs to Japanese in Bill's deliberate refusal to use such racist language. The change from Herb's use of the word terrorists to Bill word guerrillas is also intentional, as is Bill's invocation of the word Arab. Herb, however, ignores these shifts as well as Bill's confusion, which stem not just from hearing that Japanese killed people bound for Israel, but also over why Herb says Japs to his Chinese friend. Instead, Herb insists they were Japs, just like Japs. So basically, like the way that they're talking about this conflict that involves Japanese fighters, and the language that they use is very Islamophobic. And it's like, it's interesting because again, Bill, whichever one is who's who. The man who is the Chinese man is like using this language with, they're both others in a sense, and one of them is from the Asian continent, and therefore there should be some kind of level of understanding, a sense of otherness from someone that's a little bit closer to you, I guess, in like a racial sense, but that he's allowing his friend to continue to use this language, and it like enforces, there's different levels of enforcing people's worldview happening simultaneously. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
I think so. I mean, I really struggled with that specific essay, so I don't have too much to add to it.
Yeah.
Because it definitely felt like the kind of thing where I'm like, I wish I had read this text that he's referencing, but I don't have the time to do that.
That's okay.
So I will just take what I can and move on.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah.
Okay. I have something perfect to close this out, which is something I highlighted in this chapter, which is, I think, is kind of like the thesis of it. And so I'm going to use his words because he's way better than me. The anomalousness, that's a word I learned. The anomalousness of the story underscores the connection between Asian Americans and Jewish Americans as deviations from the American norm. Two populations defending themselves against pervasive and enduring anti Asian racism and anti Semitism that are embedded in the American grain. So, by one choosing to use derogatory language against another group that is an other, and the other not challenging that and therefore allowing space for the negative speak of an other, they're both upholding Western, like Western exploitive terminology. They're both upholding white supremacy by one using the language that others and another allowing that language to take up space.
Yeah. I mean, and I think part of what the whole thing exemplifies is that just because you're marginalized doesn't mean you cannot perpetuate harm
Correct.
yourself, both actively and passively.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what it boils down to. Like, even if you are marginalized in some way, the way the Jewish man is because of his Jewishness, and the Chinese man is because of his Chinese identity, that doesn't absolve you
Mm-hmm.
from causing harm. This is something you have to actively work against.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot passively learn how to be anti-racist, anti-establishment, basically.
Mm-hmm.
This is a skill you acquire.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
that's more or less what he's trying to get to. Okay, and then going on to other areas where he talks more about literature. He talks about a lot about different kinds of literature, but also I think circles it back to the beginning when he talks about higher academia and publishing, where he just talks about like, oh, now I remember what the book was. He talks about Erasure, which is the book that the movie American Fiction was based off of, which I think I brought up to you before, is like I
yeah,
really enjoy that movie.
yeah,
But that's exactly what he's trying to get to, is that like in order for an other to publish work in a publishing market that is predominantly white, the more success you see is when it's placed into a kind of category or box that labels it as another. Like, and he puts here women's literature, black women's literature, like something that is digestible for someone who is not of that,
yeah. And yeah, it brings up this notion of like what will be popular or accepted by the establishment, because it actually makes me think of, obviously he's giving those other examples, but it makes me think of a book like The Hate You Give.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing book. It's an incredible book with sharing an important, life experience, because it's what people have experienced that. But it's like, why is only this kind of book truly allowed to have space and attention and respect, and not other kinds of stories by the same demographic of people? you
Mm-hmm.
know it's only in many ways those stories that fit into stereotypes, into the expectations of what it's like to be a member of this marginalized community, that really get the time of day, which is unfortunate, because people's lives are a lot more complex, varied, and rich than just that.
100%. He gives some examples. Here he talks about Baldwin and Morrison being quite political authors, but they choose to express their commitments with a literary gracefulness. This allows them to be both minor as in like a minority author, as they unfailingly write about and center Black experience, but also major in the sense that they're literally being given a seat at the table.
Oh, that makes me think of the part where he talks about the theoretical dinner table of like, if you could have at a dinner party a bunch of authors, living or dead, who would you seat at that table? And he brings up this notion of like, you have all these authors here. Do you even really think this would be a pleasant dining experience for everybody involved? Because if you have a mix of the traditional American or British canon mix in with marginalized people who, yeah, have acquired the acceptance, I guess you could say, of the canon, of the establishment, that still would be, there would be still be friction there, you know. But you're viewing it in this more, since it's a hypothetical, because it's not going to happen, in this idealized way. But if you actually sat to think about it, it's like, I don't know, that'd probably be a shitty ass.
I'd rather be the fly on the wall than actually have a seat at the table. Yeah. So that was basically like the second to last chapter. And then I honestly don't even remember a lot from I didn't really annotate a lot in the very last chapter, because I think it went back more into like his family and stuff. But I did underline one thing, one line, totally, I think not relevant to everything else that we've talked about up to this point, but it just says everybody's been a child, but not everybody should be a parent. And I'm like, boom, that's what we're reading.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
It is something, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more when we're discussing our November pick. But to me, the decision to bring a child into this earth is something too many people take lightly.
Correct.
They take it way too lightly when it is such a big thing. That's another human life you're bringing onto this earth. And you should be prepared for the challenges of that. And you should be willing to give this child the time, attention, affection, care that they will need, regardless of what their needs are, you know. But too many people take it as just like, I just care about continuing my family. I just want to have another mini me running around. But it's like, that's never going to be a mini me. And he talks about that too. Like, your children are your others.
Yes.
You are other to them and they are other to you. You can know a lot about your children and your children can know a lot about you, but you will never and should never really know each other fully. That's just how the cookie crumbles.
Because they are their own human being.
Exactly.
Hey! Oh, we're actually getting ready to probably wrap it up because we've been talking for like almost an hour now, but please feel free to watch it back and let us know your thoughts. Also, I've been calling you Shannon by the first part of your username, but if you want me to call you something else, please let me know, because I want to call everybody by the name that they want. But I've just been going with Shannon because that's like the first part of your username, so let me know, because you've been part of the group now for a little bit. But yeah, it's okay that you didn't read it. I think that okay, so I know that you don't rate, Natalie, you don't rate nonfiction, but I do. So I gave this 5 stars. And my reasoning for giving it 5 stars is because I feel like this is a very nuanced conversation that I've been looking for a little while, and I feel like I found it in here. And this is going to help me. This feels like something that I could reference in having conversations about this topic, especially because otherness is something that I did my graduate school work around. So like this meant a lot to me in that way. But that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
I feel like also I've gotten more comfortable rating nonfiction after we read some nonfiction that was like, no, this is a 1 star.
Yeah. I think so far this year, the only nonfiction I've rated is the one I hated.
Yeah, we both have.
I was just one. Like, this was bad.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. And the people need to know.
Yeah. So, not this, but I mean, I really enjoyed this. So
yeah. I just, with my nonfiction still, I don't really feel comfortable rating it. Yeah. I just don't. It just it has to be really bad for me to be like, okay, I'm giving this 1 star because it was garbage.
Valid.
Everything else, as long as I got something out of it, I'm like, that's all I care about. So this definitely falls into the category of like, I feel like I got something out of it, which is what I'm looking for in a nonfiction. So
pretty much. Okay, so I'll just talk briefly about what we're reading next month because we're going to get ready to do some reading sprints in a few minutes. And I'll share the screen on, where's Goodreads? Goodreads, I'm just going to share screen real quick. It is called, come on computer, there we go. Child Free by Choice. Here we go. I don't know if you're able to see that. Nope, I didn't even do that. Sorry. Here we go. Child Free by Choice, the movement redefining family and creating a new age of independence by Amy Blackstone. From Dr. Amy Blackstone, a child-free woman, co-creator of the blog We Are Not Having a Baby, and nationally recognized expert on the child-free choice, comes a definitive investigation into the history and current growing movement of adults choosing to forego parenthood and what it means for our society, economy, environment, perceived gender roles, and legacies, and how understanding and supporting all types of families can lead to positive outcomes for parents, non-parents, and children alike. So that is what we are reading in November, and we'll be reviewing in a couple weeks. Yes. Yay! And once again, if you made it this far and you want to join us in the Discord, become a channel member to get that link. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe to get notifications from both of us. And yeah, we did it! Yay! Okay, so now we're going to hop off here and go get ready to do some reading sprints. So if you want to continue to hang out with us, those are being hosted here on my channel. So just check out my lives, and I'll see you there in like 4 minutes. Okay. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.